after I left my second band, I was thinking, well, now do I either focus on being an acoustic troubadour kind of person, or do I go back to the electro?
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Live Through That, the podcast where influential artists of the 80s and 90s talk to us about a pivotal moment in their lives. I'm your host, Mike Hipple, and this week I'm excited to bring you my conversation with Stephen Duffy. Stephen was one of the founding members of a little band called Duran Duran. Maybe you've heard of them. He left to do his own thing when Simon LeBon took over, and the rest is history for both Duran Duran and Stephen Duffy. Stephen had many twists and turns in his career and has a list of bands and accomplishments to go with it. He had a huge hit under the name Stephen Tin Tin Duffy with Kiss Me With Your Mouth. If you loved music in the 80s, every time this record came on at a school dance or the DJ spinned it at a club, there was a huge rush to the dance floor. But it's his band, the Lilac Time, that emerged in 1987 with their self-titled debut that has endured and blossomed. That first album featured the song Return to Yesterday, which to me is another perfect pop song. The Lilac Time are currently back with a fantastic new album, Dance Till All the Stars Come Down, that's available wherever you get your music. Being such a musician's musician, it's only natural that his pivotal moments are very musical in nature.
Well, the first pivotal moment was when Twist and Shout came out, the Beatles EP, which I think was the Christmas of 1963, or that was at least when my brother, who was 4 years older than me and still is, so he was 7 and he got that for Christmas. And I was 3 and I got like a children's story or something on a single. And I wanted to play my single, but everybody in the room, everybody at the Christmas gathering wanted to hear the Beatles. They all wanted to hear Twist and Shout, the Twist and Shout EP. And so, I mean, obviously this was something in retrospect that I realized was a massive moment in my life. Just that being in a group of people who were all excited to hear music and then to actually hear what the music was, and nobody wanting to listen to my children's story, that sort of catapulted me into an understanding of popular music at 3. It took me years to realize that I was that young when I made that understanding, when I had that moment, that has obviously led me to be a musician and have never done anything else. I never wanted to do anything else either.
The Beatles got Stephen on the road to a musical career, but it was discovering Nick Drake in 1985 that really solidified his musical direction.
After the initial understanding of pop music at a very early age and the enthusiasm for it, when I was 9 or 10, my brother, who was then 14, got into the Incredible String Band, and my parents got us tickets to go and see them at Birmingham Town Hall. So I saw the original, the great 4-piece lineup of Robin Williams and Mike Herron, Rose Simpson and Licorice, and obviously at 9 or 10, that was equally mind-blowing, because even though the Beatles had gone through their psychedelic phase, to actually see a band of 4 people playing the sitar and playing the gimbri and just picking up what seemed to be random instruments spread around the stage, and to make this sort of magical music, that was, and it being completely acoustic. I mean, I have absolutely no idea how they did it, because obviously I didn't have the technical. Now I just think, how on earth did they have all of these things mic'd up? How did we even hear any of this? But that was the the first time when I realized the power of live music. And of course, that the Incredible String Band were a Witch Season act produced by Joe Boyd, and Joe Boyd, on the recommendation of Ashley Hutchins of Fairport Convention, who were also a Witch Season band, he signed Nick Drake. And so after being in sort of post-punk groups and then having the electronic, going through the electro thing and having the hit with Kiss Me, when Nick Laird Clues from the Dream Academy actually put the cassette player next to my head when we were on holiday, and it was the Riverman, and this was 1985, just to hear that acoustic guitar and those strings and those words just took me back to the Incredible String Band concert and took me back to my love of those Witch Season bands. And so that again was a pivot, as I suppose that we would call it now, where I did actually completely reject, the electro, the synthesizer, the drum machine, and went straight back to the acoustic guitar.
For some reason, I'm almost embarrassed to ask about the Duran Duran connection, but it's kind of where everything started for Stephen. It also seems like kind of an early pivotal moment, so I need to ask about that time in his life, back when he met John Taylor and Nick Rhodes at art school in the late 70s.
I went to art college, Birmingham Polytechnic, and on the way there, I was walking behind these two guys, and one of them I recognized as the drummer of a band called TBI here, in Birmingham at the time, and the other was the guitarist from a band called Dada, and I knew that the drummer was still playing in TBI, but I wondered what the other guy was up to. So on the second day at being at art college, I went over and introduced myself and said that I'd seen Dada supporting the swell maps at the Crown, and we got talking. I said, "What are you doing? Are you still making music?" And he said, "Not at the moment." And I said, "I played the bass. Do you want to? Shall we get together?" So we got together, and that was that. And not much artwork got done at art college after that. We were doing everything from photography to sculpture, painting. It was to work out what we wanted to do in the future, and we worked out that what we wanted to do was invent new romanticism. When John said to me, "I think I know the name of the band. Did you see Barbarella's last night on the television?" And I think he said we should call it Duran Duran, which is the actual character in Barbarella's. And I either misheard him or they didn't have enough D's in the printing place, because I went off immediately and printed it, because obviously, we had printing equipment there at the art college. So I really should be getting a percentage of every time they used the name Duran Duran, I think. It was very experimental, and I kind of liked that. I liked the way that it was it didn't sound like anything else, and it was sort of a bit shambolic, and Nick had just got his first synthesizer, so there was a lot of whizzing and notes going on a little bit too long. But they had, they had ambition to be more like, I suppose, Japan or a group like that. And I just didn't see, I just couldn't see myself doing that. Obviously, after that, when I got back into making electronic music, I made a lot of records that were a lot worse than if I'd have stayed and and of course now I think we should have stayed together, because the idea of them trying to be more commercial and me trying to be uncommercial, it would have been an amusing 18 months, and it would have been amusing to see who won or what became of it. But when you're 18, you don't really think about that kind of thing.
After he left Duran Duran, Stephen didn't immediately go out and become the 80s Nick Drake. In fact, it was a bit of the opposite to some degree.
Well, I think that also just trying to make records because I wanted to make records, and uh, and those were the records I was allowed to make. You know what I mean? Nobody at that point was going to give me a deal to make acoustic music, because I kind of tried after the Durans, but it really didn't get anywhere. And at that point, after I left my second band, I was thinking, well, now do I either focus on being an acoustic troubadour kind of person, or do I go back to the electro? And I just happened to bump into an old friend who just signed to Arista Records, and he had a band called Fashion, and he had all of these new synths and drum machines. So we went and made Kiss Me, and that really. I don't think I was very good at the electro thing. I think there was obviously, you felt that my heart wasn't in it when you listen back to it now. I was trying my best, but I didn't have the feel for it. I didn't have the feel for the electro, or for dance music, as much as I did for the acoustic songwriting. But it's not to say that I didn't enjoy it, and it was interesting experimenting with all of that stuff, and and also it gave me a chance to go back to think about Motown and songwriting on that sort of, like Baby Love, to kind of, so to think about that kind of music rather than just listening to Bob Dylan all the time.
The day before yesterday, when we thought everything would now go our way, we inherited a fortune of...
I first heard Return to Yesterday and the rest of the debut Lilac Time album when it came out in 1987. Even though I had heard his electronic work, especially Kiss Me, I was at the time completely unaware that they were one and the same.
Well, I did try my best to kind of shut the door on what went before, um, to because I thought it would put people off, and I think in a way it has, because you know, when if I hadn't worked with all of the other people I've worked with, and if I hadn't have done Kiss Me, then I think it would be easier for people to accept what is, with the Lilac Time, and what is, my true, the soul and vocation, which is writing these songs. Um, but people just, they get an idea of who you are, and that's it. But there's no, what's the phrase? There's no second chance at first impressions, and that is certainly something that I've learnt.
Stephen recorded multiple solo records, including Music in Colors and I Love My Friends, and he also collaborated on a variety of projects throughout the 90s and in between Lilac Time records. But it seems he always comes back around to the Lilac Time.
I didn't realize that, but it certainly has been. It's been more enduring than my solo work for me. Even though I love My Friends and some of the stuff on Music in Color, but I think all of my best songs that I have sung have been for the Lilac Time. There were some really good ones on I Love My Friends, but who at the time? I mean, who knew? When we got back together, wasn't even sure that we were going to be the Lilac Time. We talked about changing the name, but the Lilac Time is the thing for me. And this record, the new record, is the kind of the purest Lilac Time, in that there's no bass or drums. It's just, acoustic guitar, mandolin, banjo, and Claire and I singing in harmony over the top. So it's a very simple, pure record.
The new record is a gorgeous affair, quiet with a touch of American twang. I asked him about these influences.
Well, we've always had, since we got back together, there's always been a pedal steel. Malvin Duffy played it, and now Ben Peeler, who's brilliant and put such a lot into this record. But we tried to be more like that in our first incarnation, but our A&R guy David Bates was so against the pedal steel guitar that he actually had it mixed off one song, "The Girl Who Waves at Trains." So when we got back together, we just decided to put as much pedal steel on as possible in retribution. I think that it's certainly something I come back to more than anything else. I do listen to more country. Well, especially, I listen to all country up until about, I don't know, late 70s. But I listen to a lot of folk music, country music. That is and blues. That's the stuff I go back to again and again. Recently, I just went through all of George Jones, Tammy Wynette, but going back, I suppose what got me into it, where it was obviously Nashville Skyline and the Byrds when they did Sweetheart of the Rodeo, and then Gram Parsons, and everything that's kind of went out from there in that sort of early country rock thing. That I suppose was what really turned me on to it. But at the time, we had over here, I had absolutely no idea of the depth of it.
Thank you, Stephen, for taking the time to share these stories with us. The Lilac Time's new record, Dance Till All the Stars Come Down, is out right now wherever you get your music from. Here's a snippet of a favorite track off the album, The Band That Nobody Knew.
The band that nobody knew, where wild strawberries grew. Forgive me, have we met? It's easier to turn down and say I'll see you around the end of this quartet. We might as well start again, as we've learned nothing since then. It's easy to forget if you count us in. At least then we'll know when to begin. Remember the words to the one where the cover was blurred, and know how to sense it's a fade. That was our time in the shade. No one but the driver got paid.
And just a programming note that we'll be off for a few weeks after this episode, getting together a new slate of some pretty cool episodes I have coming up for the fall. And a friendly reminder that you can also buy my book on 80s musicians and where they are today, 80s Redux, and its sequel on 90s artists, Live Through That, wherever you buy your books. And if you like this show, please subscribe so that you'll know when the latest episode comes out. And if you're so inclined, leave a good review, too. You can also follow me on Twitter and Facebook at Mike Hipple Photo, all one word. Thanks for listening.